Most voice assistants for seniors fail the moment the Wi-Fi goes out. Grandma asks Alexa to turn on the lights, and instead of a response, she gets silence. Or worse, sorry, I'm having trouble connecting to the internet right now. That's not just annoying. For someone with limited mobility, it can be legitimately dangerous. My name is Chelsea Miller, and after setting up smart home systems for my own parents, both in their 70s, I've learned exactly which voice-controlled devices actually work when you need them most, and which ones are just fancy paperweights with a cloud dependency problem. You're listening to the Smart Home Setup Podcast. Quick heads up before we go any further. Everything you're about to hear, the research, the data, the script, that's all written and verified by real humans who actually test this stuff. The voice you're hearing, though, that's AI generated. We're upfront about that because transparency matters, especially when we're talking about privacy and tech you're bringing into your home. If you've been listening for a while, thank you. It means a lot that you keep showing up. And if you're new here, welcome. We drop new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, covering smart home setups that prioritize local control, privacy, and reliability over flashy features that stop working the moment your internet cuts out. Let's jump right in. Voice-activated smart home devices can genuinely change daily life for elderly users, but only if they work reliably offline, respect privacy, and won't stop functioning the moment a company decides to shut down a cloud service. After testing dozens of voice-controlled smart home setups with my own parents, I've learned that the best systems combine local processing, simple command structures, and Matter-compatible hardware that doesn't phone home every time someone asks for the weather. Here's what actually works. A locally controlled voice assistant running on a Raspberry Pi with Home Assistant paired with Zigbee or Thread devices that function completely without internet. The devices I'm recommending today scored 7 out of 10 or higher on my cloud-free viability score, meaning you can unplug your router and they'll still turn on lights. Now let's talk about what to look for in voice-controlled smart home devices for elderly users. First up, local voice processing versus cloud-dependent systems. Most voice assistants, Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, send every single command to distant servers before executing. That's 200 to 500 milliseconds of latency per command, assuming your internet connection is perfect. When it's not, grandma's lights don't turn on. Worse, these systems record conversations indefinitely unless you manually delete recordings every month. Local voice processing keeps everything on your network. I run Home Assistant's Assist with a Wyoming satellite on my parents' setup. Commands process in under 150 milliseconds, work during internet outages, and store zero audio in the cloud. The trade-off? You need to set up the system yourself. There's no plug-and-play option yet. But the reliability improvement is dramatic. My dad hasn't experienced a "sorry, I'm having trouble connecting" failure in 8 months. If you're not ready to self-host, look for devices with explicit offline modes. Some smart displays and hubs can execute basic automations locally after initial setup, even if their voice recognition still requires cloud access. Moving on to protocol compatibility and hub requirements. The worst mistake in setting up a voice-controlled smart home for elderly users is mixing incompatible protocols. Here's what you need to know. Zigbee devices require a Zigbee coordinator, something like a Philips Hue bridge, Home Assistant Yellow, or a USB stick plugged into a server. Latency is typically 50 to 150 milliseconds for direct commands. Z-Wave requires a Z-Wave hub. It has slightly better range through walls, but fewer device options for seniors, fewer large button remotes, for example. Thread is the newest mesh protocol and pairs with Matter 1.4 for cross-platform compatibility. It requires a Thread border router, which is built into recent Apple HomePods, Google Nest Hubs, and some Echo devices. Response time is comparable to Zigbee. Matter 1.4 is a compatibility layer that lets Thread, Wi-Fi, and some Zigbee devices work across ecosystems, but voice control still typically routes through cloud services unless you're running Home Assistant. Wi-Fi devices work without a hub, but saturate your network if you add more than 15 to 20 devices. They also depend entirely on your router staying online. For a senior's home, I strongly recommend building around Zigbee or Thread with a local hub. Next, command simplicity and custom wake words. Seniors don't need or want to memorize 50 different voice commands. The ideal setup responds to natural phrasing. Turn on the kitchen light. Works. Kitchen light on. Works. Illuminate the cooking area. Too verbose. Feels unnatural. If you're using Home Assistant, you can define aliases so multiple phrasings trigger the same action. You can set it up so that kitchen light, light above the sink, and cooking light all turn on the same ceiling fixture. Custom wake words also matter. Hey Google is harder to pronounce for seniors with speech impediments than a short, sharp word like home or assist. Home Assistant lets you set custom wake words. I changed my parents' system to respond to house, which they find easier to say clearly. Now, fallback behavior when voice fails. Voice recognition isn't 100% reliable for anyone, and it's worse for users with softer voices, accents, or respiratory conditions. Every voice-controlled smart home setup for elderly users needs physical backup controls. That means Zigbee button remotes placed next to beds, chairs, and entryways. It means hardwired smart switches that still work when the hub fails. And it means motion sensors with fallback automations. If motion is detected in the bathroom at night between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., the bathroom light automatically turns on at 20% brightness for 5 minutes. The key principle is this. Voice should enhance physical controls, not replace them. Finally, privacy and data retention policies. Amazon and Google retain voice recordings indefinitely unless you manually delete them. Ring doorbells share footage with law enforcement without warrants. Nest cameras require ongoing subscriptions to access your own footage after 3 hours. When recommending devices for seniors who are disproportionately targeted by scams and often share sensitive health information verbally, I prioritize local storage for cameras and voice recordings, no subscription requirements for basic functionality, explicit offline modes documented by the manufacturer, and open source firmware when possible so you can audit what data leaves your network. I run packet captures on every device I test. If it sends telemetry to third-party analytics servers, not just the manufacturer, I note it in the review. Seniors deserve to know when their lights are reporting usage patterns to data brokers. All right, let's get into our top picks for voice-activated smart home devices for seniors. First, the Home Assistant Green with Wyoming Satellite. Check the link below to see the current price. This is a pre-configured server that runs local voice processing through Home Assistant's Assist feature. Pair it with a Wyoming protocol microphone. I use a repurposed Echo Dot with custom firmware, and you get a fully offline voice assistant that controls Zigbee, Thread, Z-Wave, and Wi-Fi devices without sending a single packet to Amazon or Google. The pros: 100% local voice processing, so it works during internet outages. Command latency is under 150 milliseconds for Zigbee devices. It supports custom wake words and command aliases. There are no subscription fees, no cloud dependencies, and it's compatible with over 3,000 device integrations. The cons: initial setup requires technical comfort. You'll be working with command line interfaces and YAML config files. There's no commercial support, so you're relying on community forums. Voice recognition accuracy is 85 to 90%, which is slightly behind cloud-based systems. And custom wake word training takes 30 to 45 minutes. Cloud-free viability score, 10 out of 10. This is the gold standard for privacy-conscious seniors. The setup curve is steep, but once configured, it's bulletproof. I set this up for my parents in 2024 and haven't had to troubleshoot remotely once. Next, the Aqara Hub M3 with Zigbee voice control buttons. Check the link below for pricing. This is a Zigbee 3.0 coordinator that integrates with Apple HomeKit, Google Home, and Alexa. But, crucially, it can also run local automations without cloud access. Pair it with Aqara's wireless remote switch H1 buttons for physical backup controls. The pros, it's a Zigbee 3.0 and Matter bridge, so it works with multiple ecosystems. Local automation mode executes routines even when the internet is down. Button response time is under 100 milliseconds. It supports up to 128 Zigbee devices on one hub. And the physical buttons have raised tactile markings, which makes them easier for low vision users. The cons, voice control still requires a cloud connection through HomeKit, Google, or Alexa. You can't use custom wake words, you're stuck with platform defaults. Aqara's app privacy policy allows anonymized usage data sharing, and some users report a 2 to 3% command failure rate during peak network hours. Cloud-free viability score, 7 out of 10. The automation engine runs locally, but voice commands route through cloud services. It's a compromise, better than pure Wi-Fi devices, but not fully offline. For seniors who want just works simplicity with minimal setup, this hits a sweet spot. Moving on to the Philips Hue dimmer switch with Hue Bridge. Check the link for current pricing. This switch doesn't include voice control itself, but it's the best physical backup interface for voice-controlled lighting. Pair it with a Hue Bridge and connect the bridge to Home Assistant or HomeKit for voice commands. The pros: 100% local control. No cloud required after initial setup. Large, tactile buttons that are easy to press in the dark. It mounts on walls or sits on nightstands magnetically. Response time is 30 to 50 milliseconds, which is faster than any voice command, and the battery lasts over 2 years under typical use. The cons: no voice functionality on its own. It requires separate voice assistant integration. The Hue Bridge locks you into the Philips ecosystem unless you use Home Assistant. Bridge firmware updates occasionally break third-party integrations, and the 4-button layout can confuse users expecting a simple on-off toggle. Cloud-free viability score, 9 out of 10. This is what I put on every bedside table. Voice is great until you wake up at 3 a.m. with a sore throat and can't speak loudly enough to trigger the wake word. A physical button always works. Next, the Eve Energy Smart Plug with Thread support. Check the link below for pricing. This is a Thread-enabled outlet that measures real-time power consumption and responds to voice commands through HomeKit, Alexa, or Google Home. Crucially, it stores all energy data locally. No cloud storage, no subscriptions. The pros: Thread protocol with Matter 1.4 support makes it future-proof. All energy monitoring data stays local. The Eve app accesses it via Bluetooth or Thread. Response time for on-off commands via Thread border router is 50 to 80 milliseconds. It works as a Thread repeater, extending network range, and there's a physical power button on the plug itself for fallback control. The cons: it requires a Thread border router, something like an Apple HomePod Mini or Google Nest Hub for voice control. The bulky design blocks adjacent outlets and power strips. Energy monitoring is only accessible through Eve's iOS app, so there's no Android support. And voice commands through Alexa have about 200 milliseconds of extra latency compared to HomeKit. Cloud-free viability score, 8 out of 10. Thread is the future of smart home protocols, and Eve proves it's ready now. The local data storage is a huge privacy win. My only complaint is the iOS-only energy monitoring. Android users can still control the plug, but can't see power data. Now, the Innovelli Blue Series Smart Switch with Zigbee. Check the link for current pricing. This is a Zigbee 3.0 in-wall switch that replaces standard light switches. It includes a configurable LED bar for visual notifications, useful for seniors with hearing loss, and works with any Zigbee hub for voice control. The pros: it functions as a normal switch even if the hub fails, so you've got a hard-wired fallback. Zigbee 3.0 acts as a mesh repeater, strengthening network reliability. The LED bar can show custom colors for notifications, like motion detected or door left open. On-off response when triggered locally is under 50 milliseconds, and the open-source firmware allows custom programming for power users. The cons: installation requires shutting off the circuit breaker and working with line voltage, so hire an electrician if you're unsure. It doesn't support older homes without a neutral wire. You need a neutral wire for it to function. The configuration menu is buried in the Hub app and isn't intuitive for beginners. And the LED bar defaults to bright blue, which some users find too intense at night. Cloud-free viability score: 9 out of 10. Hardwired switches are the most reliable smart home devices you can install. Even if your hub, internet, and voice assistant all fail simultaneously, this switch still turns the lights on and off. That's the level of reliability seniors need. Finally, the Samsung SmartThings station with Matter support. Check the link below for pricing. This is a hybrid hub that supports Zigbee Thread, Matter 1.4, all in one device. SmartThings automations run locally for supported devices, no cloud required. Matter support means cross-ecosystem compatibility. There's a wireless phone charger built into the top surface, so it's dual purpose. And Samsung Knox security platform protects the hub from network intrusions. The cons: Bixby voice recognition is noticeably worse than Alexa or Google. I measured 70 to 75% accuracy in my testing. The SmartThings app has a steep learning curve with too many menus and submenus. Local processing only works for SmartThings Edge drivers. Many devices still route through the cloud. And Samsung's privacy policy reserves the right to use voice data for product improvement. Cloud-free viability score: 6 out of 10. The hardware is excellent, truly a great multi-protocol hub, but Samsung's cloud dependency and mediocre voice assistant drag the score down. If you're willing to pair this with Home Assistant, it integrates well. You can get local control with better voice recognition. Out of the box, it's too cloud-reliant for my comfort. Now let's cover some frequently asked questions. What is the easiest voice-controlled smart home for elderly users who aren't tech-savvy? The easiest setup is an Aqara Hub M3 with Apple HomeKit integration if the senior already uses an iPhone, or Samsung SmartThings station with Alexa if they use Android. Both systems allow voice control through familiar assistants, Siri or Alexa, while running basic automations locally. The key is to keep device counts low, under 10 devices total, and stick to one protocol, like Zigbee, to avoid compatibility issues. Pair any voice system with physical backup controls, like Philips Hue dimmer switches, so the senior isn't stranded when voice recognition fails. I also recommend scheduling a video call to walk through the setup remotely. Trying to teach voice commands over the phone doesn't work. Can voice-controlled smart home devices work without internet or a subscription? Yes, but only if you choose the right hardware and hub. Zigbee and Thread devices paired with Home Assistant can run completely offline once configured. I've tested setups that control lights, locks, and thermostats without internet for weeks. The catch is, initial setup requires internet to download device drivers, and voice recognition quality drops to about 85 to 90% accuracy compared to cloud-based systems. If you're willing to accept slightly less accurate voice control in exchange for privacy and reliability, Home Assistant with a local voice satellite is the only truly offline option. Everything else, Alexa, Google, HomeKit with Siri, requires cloud connectivity for voice commands, even if the devices themselves can operate locally. Which voice assistant is better for seniors? Alexa, Google Assistant, or Siri? Google Assistant has the best voice recognition accuracy, 92 to 95% in independent tests. But it also collects the most data and provides the fewest privacy controls. Alexa offers the widest device compatibility and allows you to set routines that trigger multiple actions with one command. Alexa Bedtime can lock doors, turn off lights, and lower the thermostat all at once. Siri with HomeKit is the most privacy-focused of the commercial options. Apple processes voice commands on device when possible and doesn't sell data to advertisers, but it has the smallest selection of compatible smart home devices. For seniors, I usually recommend Alexa for simplicity and compatibility, then immediately disable personalized ads and set recordings to auto-delete after 3 months. How reliable are voice commands for critical tasks like unlocking doors or calling for help? Voice commands should never be the only control method for critical safety tasks. In my testing, even the best voice assistants have a 2 to 5% failure rate due to background noise, unclear pronunciation, or network issues. For door locks, I always install a Thread or Zigbee smart lock with a physical keypad as backup. If voice fails, they can enter a PIN code. For emergency situations, a wearable fall detection button, hardwired to call 911 or a monitoring service, is far more reliable than voice commands. Voice control works beautifully 95% of the time for non-critical tasks, like lights and thermostats, but seniors need physical fallbacks for anything related to security or medical emergencies. Do I need to hire someone to install a voice-controlled smart home for elderly parents? It depends on your technical comfort level and which devices you choose. Plug-in devices like smart plugs, table lamps with smart bulbs, and wireless sensors require zero installation. Anyone can set those up by following app instructions. In-wall smart switches and hard-wired devices require working with line voltage electricity, and I strongly recommend hiring a licensed electrician unless you have electrical experience yourself. The hub and voice assistant configuration varies. Cloud-based systems like Alexa, Google, and HomeKit with commercial hubs have user-friendly setup wizards that most people can complete in 30 to 60 minutes, while Home Assistant with local voice processing requires Linux command line knowledge and 4 to 6 hours of configuration time. If you're setting up devices for parents who live far away, consider hiring a local smart home installer for the physical work, then handling the automation logic remotely yourself. Here's the verdict. The best voice-controlled smart home for elderly users balances 3 factors: reliability, that's local processing with physical fallbacks; simplicity, meaning natural command structures; and privacy, which means minimal cloud dependencies. For families willing to invest setup time, Home Assistant Green with local voice processing offers unmatched reliability and privacy. For those who need plug-and-play simplicity, Akara Hub M3 with Zigbee devices provides a solid middle ground. Not fully offline, but far better than pure Wi-Fi systems. Whatever you choose, add physical backup controls. Voice is transformative for seniors with mobility challenges, but it shouldn't be the only way to turn on a light or unlock a door. The smart home that works best is the one that still functions when technology fails, and technology always fails eventually. That wraps up this episode of the Smart Home Setup Podcast. Thanks for listening. New episodes come out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's always something coming down the line. If this was useful to you, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. It genuinely helps other people find the show when they're searching for honest, smart home advice that isn't just affiliate link spam. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe or follow so you get notified the moment a new episode drops. See you next time!